Hi, welcome to the Libertarian Party of Texas Candidate Highlight. I'm Amanda Gibbs. I'm the Communications Director, and this is Nathan Polsky, my co-host, who is with the Political Action Department. And tonight we have Hawk Dunlap. He is our candidate for Texas Railroad Commission.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on.
All right, thanks for joining. Now, is it Hawk or Hawkins, or both?
Well, my given name is Hawkins. It was shortened down at birth to Hawk, and it just kind of stuck.
And so on the ballot, it'll show up as Hawk?
I do hope so, yes.
All right.
That's kind of everyone knows me as that. So
Perfect. Well, Hawk, who are you? What are you running for? Because I don't think we've ever met in person yet.
I don't believe we have. My name is Hawk Dunlap. I'm a sixth-generation Texan. I'm fourth generation in the oil and gas industry. I graduated from Stephen F. Austin State University. Axum Jacks. I started my oil and gas career in 1991 as a summer job, working on workover rigs in East Texas, and was fortunate enough to work for a small company who allowed me to work my way through school. When I graduated, I went up to Oklahoma and started snubbing pipe, which is working on high pressure gas wells up in Oklahoma. 5 weeks in, I was on a plane to Europe, and I spent the next 27 years overseas. I've lived in Holland, Venezuela, Singapore, Dubai, Jakarta, and recently I've spent the majority of the last 15 years, up until November of 21, in Bali, Indonesia.
So, world traveler.
I have 103 countries now under my belt.
Well, that's awesome. So, what brought you back to Texas then?
Well, it's a long string of events. I incorporated my own company in Singapore in 2020. In November of 21, I had a client in West Africa who had a blowout. I've mostly worked well control, oil well fires, and blowouts for the better part of my career since 2000. So 24 years now in the well control field, and I created my own company. I went to Nigeria and worked on a blowout over there. Was on the way home to Bali, and had to return home from a family emergency, and I got locked out because of COVID, and I couldn't get home. And through a series of events and some things that had happened out in Crane County in West Texas, I was stuck in the U.S. Had nothing else to do anyway, so I went to came out and starting helping ranchers in West Texas that were having issues with the Railroad Commission with uncontrolled blowouts on their ranches, and so that's pretty much what I've been doing. I've been out here in West Texas for the last 2 years, digging up, plugging abandoned wells and finding them that are not plugged. I've dug up some of the Railroad Commission's wells that they've plugged under their orphan well program and found that they were leaking and improperly plugged. And I'm continuing to do that for ranchers out here. I growing up in the oil and gas industry, and of course, it's fed my family for 4 generations, and I like to tell people if I cut my wrist, I'd bleed crude oil. But in having traveled around the world, I've worked with different regulatory bodies and in different countries and different aspects of the industry, and I'm really disappointed in the Railroad Commission and the 3 commissioners that are sitting now. I refer to them as the 3 stooges. None of them have any oil and gas experience. They're more or less working for the industry and not for the people that elect them, and that really pissed me off. And I feel like we're at a crossroads now in Texas. We can do a lot better, and I think if we had some experience on the commission to turn things around and start bringing it back to be an agency that works for the people and not for the industry that they're charged to regulate.
Well, that was going to lead into my next question: is what inspired you to run? But it sounds like the Three Stooges is causing you to run.
It's been a real disappointment. I've attended railroad commission meetings in Austin, and there's people that drive to Austin, like this group that drove all the way from Van Horn to ask for help because they were laying a pipeline within a tenth of a mile from a neighborhood out there, and they had no emergency services to handle an incident if something like that were to happen, and they blew these people off, and they acted like that it was. It was annoying the commissioners that they actually came in and brought this subject up. There's ranchers out here that have been fighting orphan wells for 10 years that are leaking hydrogen sulfide, which is, a poisonous gas. These wells are located, behind their house, and they can smell the hydrogen sulfide in their house. And they go down, they write letters, they file complaints, and nothing's being done. And it's not just a West Texas Permian Basin issue. This is happening in East Texas. I was contacted by people in Wood County. I've been contacted by people in Marion County. This is a problem that's happening in McMullen County, down in South Texas. So it's a statewide problem. And the Houston Chronicle came out and spent some time with me, and they did a 3-series article on what we've been doing out here and about our troubles out here. And then Wayne Christian did an op-ed 2 days after the article was released, basically calling me a liar. And he has zero oil and gas experience. He's a gospel singer and a financial planner. So the fact that they do not want to admit there's a problem is a problem within itself. I've had industry people out here, guys that I grew up with, guys that I've worked all over the world. They've come out and had a look at our efforts out here on the Antenna Ranch. And anybody, even people that don't have industry experience, can actually look at what we're doing, and they can tell that this is a problem. But to have our regulating body turn the other cheek, or blind eye, if you will, to these issues is very disturbing. The biggest problem I see that is, the people in the larger cities, the metropolitan areas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and Houston. These wells are in the backyards there, which there are some in Arlington. They're actively drilling in Arlington. These are going to become issues in metropolitan cities if we don't get a handle on this and actually regulate and enforce the rules. I mean, I'm not advocating for new rules. I mean, I'm advocating to change the name of the Railroad Commission. I think it's a stupid name.
They don't do anything with the railroad.
Yeah, exactly. Now, consequently, when I grew up, in the industry, we everybody knew. You had a grandparent, you had a parent, you had a brother or sister, somebody worked in the oil and gas industry. So, back in the 80s and 90s, everybody knew who the Railroad Commission was. And it's not that way that anymore. There's thousands of people moving to Texas every month that are going to become stakeholders. They're going to be registered voters, and they think that if the train blows the whistle too loud at 2:00 in the morning, that's who they need to report this to. And it's intellectually dishonest for the agency to even keep the name. It's they say it's going to take $1 million to change the name. Well, I've seen them piss away $1 million trying to plug a well that they don't have the competency to plug. And so it's give and take, and I think that's the first step in managing the agency is to change the name so everybody knows what they do.
So can you give a 2-minute high-level overview of what the Texas Railroad Commission is actually in charge of doing?
Sure. The Railroad Commission is in charge of oil and gas regulation and enforcement, surface mining, such as our lignite coal mines, and intrastate pipelines, which are the pipelines that run within the state but do not cross the state lines.
Okay. And then so in the event that a well needs to be plugged, either because a private owner says the wells run dry, or for whatever other reason, the Railroad Commission is supposed to ensure that the regulations for capping that are followed?
Well, that's correct. And typically what we're seeing with the orphan well program is you're looking at the larger operators, the majors, are assigning poor performing assets to smaller operators who then produce them as long as they can, and then they either try to pawn them off on somebody smaller, or they go bankrupt and they leave the task of plugging the wells onto a not nonprofit organization, or they stay dormant. They're leaking methane, they're leaking produced water or oil at surface, polluting the groundwater, and they leave it until the state gets around to plugging it. I've excavated 3 wells that were plugged by the Railroad Commission under the Orphan Well Program, and all 3 of those that I've excavated and inspected are leaking. So in 2023, they love to brag that they plugged 1,700 wells in the state under the Orphan Well Program, and are they actually plugged? I highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure that they got lucky on 1 or 2 or 3 of them, but I would think for the majority of the 1,700 that if I was to put a bucket of an excavator in and inspect those wells, that they're not plugged, that they're leaking.
Okay, so this is like super environmental, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And
Okay.
I've been called a tree hugger, and yes, I am. I hunt, I fish, I love to scuba dive. Was recently on a dive trip, and I can actually see that we do have issues. We have bleaching of the coral, and we have fugitive methane. And this is not. Let me say, like I said again, the oil and gas industry has fed my family for 4 generations. We can do a hell of a lot better, and it's amazing what you can do with these fugitive emissions with the little thread tape and a couple of pipe wrenches, tightening some things up and eliminating some things. And the reason it's not being done is laziness. I mean, we've got uncontrolled flow in Pecos County of 30 some odd wells that were drilled as oil and gas wells that were returned to the landowner under a Form P13, and the bottom plugs over the hydrocarbon bearing zones have failed. And you're getting 20,000 parts per million H2S at the wellhead. You're getting fully saturated brine water, which normal fresh water weighs 8.33 pounds per gallon. The water flowing out of these wells are in excess of 10 pounds, so 10 pound one, which is fully saturated with salt. And this is running on the ground. This is flowing into our freshwater aquifers out here, and this is a huge problem. So the Railroad Commission can run around and brag about plugging 1,700 wells in a cookie cutter manner, but why aren't they tackling the tough problems? And I don't think they have the competency to do it. I've seen them work up close firsthand, and they are way in over their head with some of the stuff that they're doing out here, and more especially with this blowout that we had out here last December. They were in over their head. As far as I'm concerned, they got lucky, and but the well's still leaking. And I was out there a couple of months ago, and it's still leaking, and I think they spent over $2 million on that one. So the industry is going to have to be held accountable for these things, not the taxpayers. And good Lord, our school teachers can't even buy, they're having to buy their own school supplies and everything else, and we're plugging industry wells. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's an uphill battle. I'm fortunate enough that I have the experience to get in, and not motivated by money by any means, and I'm not scared to step on toes. And I think that's got to be something that's taken in consideration when you're hiring a civil servant. Is he actually going to do something for the people, or is he going to lean over and start doing something for the industry and having all these good feel-good moments like they have on social media?
Right. So is there any sort of repercussions that the government agencies or the private industries suffer if their wells that they cap leak?
No, I mean there's no recourse. I mean, what can you do? You get on social media and you embarrass them. I mean, case in point, and I had a well out here that was flowing crude oil and gas and salt water to surface, and and I reported it myself. I had two wells that were essentially blowouts, and the basic definition of a blowout is the uncontrolled release of wellbore fluids into and out of the wellbore, and that's what this was a blowout. I mean, it wasn't pretty, and the fire and all this stuff that we've been used to, that we've been seeing on the news. It wouldn't have made the newspaper, but it was, by definition, a blowout. And they came out and looked at the wells, and they took off, never be seen again. And and this is the problem. I mean, there's people, the inspectors, the agency as a whole doesn't have the competency to deal with the issues that are going around that are happening in the state at the moment.
I don't really understand why this is not something done in the private sector.
And
Like this position as a whole, why it is an elected position. I guess
I agree.
maybe.
And let me be perfectly honest. I hate that it's and I'm not knocking shingles off anybody's roof, but I hate that this is a political position. If you look at the Democratic candidate, and the Democrats really missed the mark by not choosing Bill Birch as their candidate. Bill Birch is a very competent engineer. He's a very experienced well control engineer. Bill and I have worked together all over the world, and he was the one that really would have gave them a leg up in this race. But they chose someone who moved in here from out of the state, and works in safety, and has no real oil and gas experience. And you look at the incumbent, the Republican. She's a daughter of a career politician who's never had a pair of gloves on her hands. And if this was a resume drop where you could just throw your resume in the newspaper and let people decide, it'd be one thing or the other. you
Mm-hmm.
know, but it's not that way. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that vote along party lines. And back when I was a kid and when I first started voting, you voted for the best person for the job. And it's just not that way anymore. We've gotten way too divided on issues, and we're way too red and blue. And unfortunately, that's not doing anything but we're shooting ourselves in the foot and then reloading and shooting ourselves in the other foot.
That's for sure.
That's a good one. Between you and Sarah and Jaime Diaz, who was our Railroad Commission
2 years
candidate
ago.
this last time, yeah, I learned so much about like into wells and all of that I had no clue. I was like, what the hell is all of this?
And look, and I love Jaime. Jaime came out and spent several days with me. Yeah, I fell in love with Jaime in Odessa at a forum, and he got up there, and he the first thing out of his mouth was, "I know nothing about the oil and gas business, but I'm willing to ask questions and get people around me that do know to help me make decisions." And I fell in love with the guy. And I met him and his dad, and I really supported him, and I'm really happy with what he did. Uh, in the election, and I could, continue to be friends with him, and I think the world of him. Um, it's disappointing that he didn't do better, and he's the kind of guy I can work with people like that. If you tell me you don't know, but you're willing to
Hmm.
throw your back into it. I mean, these are that's what the oil industry's been based on. I mean, we all started with nothing, and we knew nothing, and we had a work ethic that was second to none, and that's what built our industry. And you can do that with anybody as long as they have the want to. You can always educate them. And I've been fortunate enough in my life that I was educated by some real go-getters and some really hard men, and a few women to boot. And that's what made me who I am today. And we need more people. We need more people, more working class people that are willing to get out and vote and to work and to get. But my generation and people my age, I mean, they're jaded. They don't care about the political system. They're not interested. Whoever's going to win is going to win, and they're over it. And we need to carry a different message about that this is going to be the party that's going to take over. When my granddaddy was working, the Democrats were the working man's party. Then it became the Republicans, and I kind of think that there's a lot of us my age that are politically homeless and don't really fit in anywhere. And I think this is an opportunity for us to pick up some of those people, because basically from my platform is I'm going to do me and you're going to do you, and we're going to help each other in between. And if you're going to steal money out of my check, then don't send it away to a foreign country. We got people here that are suffering.
Mm-hmm. So when you win, if you win, when you win, win. We always go with the win here. Do you have a set of one or two priorities that you would tackle first thing?
Well, like I said earlier, the biggest priority is going to be changing the name, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be an uphill battle because this Railroad Commission name has shielded people from actually knowing what the commission does, and there's a total lack of transparency in that deal. So changing the name's going to be big. It's probably going to have to go through the House and the Senate, but I wear size 12 red wing steel toe boots, and I'm quite happy to walk the halls and get things done. We're going to have to admit that we've got a produced water problem. We have way too much water going in the ground, and the earth is full, and we're going to have to find a better way to dispose of our water, whether it's going to be recycling for ag use, or recycling for reuse in oil and gas industry. And we have enough water, and we have the technology. It's expensive, but we should not be pulling our groundwater out of the ground and mixing it with chemicals and pumping it back into a well. You cannot tell me that you cannot find a better use for this produced water than to just pump it away in a formation, either cause earthquakes or pollute our groundwater. And there's people smarter than me that have come up with solutions. It's not cheap, but change has never been cheap. And but this change has got to happen. We've also got to look at different ways of how we're plugging these wells. If the state's going to plug a well, guess what? The cost just went up, and I hate
Mm-hmm.
to say it, but we're not going to be plugging wells for $25,000 or $30,000 and expecting them to stay plugged. There's processes and technologies that can be used to properly plug these wells, and it's going to cost a lot more money. So, that's going to cost more to the operator, and eventually, until we get this orphan well problem solved, it's going to cost the taxpayer more. There's the Railroad Commission. It took them, nearly $1 million to plug one well out here, and $2 million to take care of the blowout. So the longer we wait, and the more time that elapses, the casing, the pipe deteriorates. We continue to have these abnormal, shallow pressure subsurface. And the longer we wait and we continue to do these things, it's just gonna raise the cost more and more and more.
What's the do you know what the general cost is right now if the state plugs a well versus you plugging?
I'm thinking, and don't quote me on this, but I'm thinking it's somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000,
For the
and
state to plug one?
that may be on the high end. Uh, you know, uh, some of these wells, and it depends. It's a well by well issue, and like I said earlier, there's no cookie cutter solution. More especially these wells are 70, 80 years old, and more investigation has to be done with use of electric line logs. Doing looking for corrosion, looking for holes in the casing, and give you, we have the technology to plug these wells better. Some wells may cost, 70, $80,000 to plug correctly, without any problems. These out here where we have these subsurface cross flows, we're looking at, a couple of 100,000 to do it properly and to keep it plugged. And the big thing is, after they plug a well, they cut the wellhead off and the casing off below ground, 3 or 4 foot below ground, and they weld a cap on them and they cover them up, and then that's it, sayonara. And the issue we're gonna have to start implementing is we're gonna have to have at least a minimum 6 months of mandatory monitoring, to see if the well pressure's back up again, to see if there's any gas that comes, to test the gas. I mean, these things are going to have to be implemented to make sure that we're not just plugging these wells for 30, 40, 50 years. We're plugging them for 100, 200 years or more, and
Hmm.
we're going to have to start relying on different products other than cement. Cement has been the cheapest go-to solution for years and years, and I tell people that what I've been doing is very similar to these cadaver farms that are scattered out across the United States, where people donate their bodies to science and they lay them out in the woods and they study the decomposition of the body so they can get a timeline as to uh, how long the body's been out there, and it helps in forensic science and investigation, and basically that's what we've been doing out here. We have a body farm and we have excavated wells that have been plugged in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, and and we've had a look at them, and so far they've all been failed. Whether it's a mechanical integrity issue from the steel casings that are in the ground that have rotted, or the failure of the cement, or in fact, some of these wells were just not plugged. And case in point is, last month an operator came out to re-enter a well, and on their original W3A, which is the application that an operator will file with the Railroad Commission, um, they listed three plugs, one at 300 feet, one somewhere around 1,100 feet, and then another one on bottom. And as they ran pipe in the hole, they didn't find the first two plugs, and they were not there. And I was on location, and I was watching, and there was no cement in this well. And so instead of running the bottom and verifying if the third plug was actually placed, and I think this well was plugged in 1972, instead of running in the bottom and finding out if the third plug was set at around 2,500 feet, the Railroad Commission said, that's good, come out of the hole. And that's ridiculous. And if you file a document with the state and you sign it and you swear that you got three plugs in this well, and you run back into the well and two of the plugs are not there, you can't find them, then you should verify if the third one was there.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen in this case. So it's clearly evident that the Railroad Commission is in colluding with industry, and siding with them, and not doing the right thing. And they can't pull the blanket over my eyes. I mean, I'm there, I watch, I have the experience, I can tell what's going on, and I can see what comes out of the well. So these are the things that are going to be on the top of my list, and it's going to make a lot of people angry. But I'm 54 years old. I've been making people angry all my life.
Well, and this is where that this line for libertarians is very interesting, where if you talking to most libertarians, they're going to say, we don't like regulations, we don't like being told how to do things or what to do. But in the case of wells, when those bust or when those erupt, that can cause downward damage to other property, to other, the ecosystem. So it's not just a let me do what I want to do and I'm not going to hurt anybody. There's a very good chance that not plugging a well properly, not closing them up properly, can really cause some serious damage elsewhere.
No, there's more than a very good chance. It's 100% that it's going to cause damage in other areas. And now with the carbon capture and injecting that in the ground, that's going to be another headache. And when you inject CO2 in the ground and it contacts water, you create carbonic acid, which eats away steel. And and the Railroad Commission is asking for primacy for these type of wells, and they can't even keep produced water in the ground. And so, yeah, I'm 100%. I don't like anybody to tell me what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of been that way in my life. But there are certain things that have to be done the right way, and plugging wells and regulating the industry. There's only one way to do it, and that's the right way. And there's no sugarcoating it. There's no tiptoeing through the tulips. It's got to be done the right way. And and I'm not asking for more regulation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
good Lord, we've got the statewide rules on oil and gas regulation, and it's 3 inches thick, and gosh, we got enough rules, but we need to start enforcing the rules that are in that book, and we may have to tweak them here and there, and make a few changes because of new data and new technology and these kind of things, and fine. But if you think I'm going to go down to Austin and start slinging paper around saying we're going to regulate, we're going to make new regulations that we're going to do, that's not going to happen. We have enough of those.
Start holding people actually accountable for not plugging wells properly, or in some cases apparently not plugging them at all. Once money starts hitting people, or other legal actions start taking place, allowing other property owners to sue the state or whoever else for not properly plugging. Maybe do you think we would then start seeing some better enforcement?
Oh, I'm sure you would, and that's that's one thing that's really that bothers me. There's no recourse to landowners when you have an orphan well. It belongs to the state. The state is judgment proof, and your property is in their hands, and okay, fine. Then the state ought to take care of it and take care of it the right way. And you have operators that are going bankrupt because they don't want to pay. Let me back up a little bit. We, had a gentleman that's been in the industry longer than I have, and a really smart guy, and he told me one time, he said nobody likes to pay for a funeral, and when you're plugging a well, that's exactly what you're doing. You're burying this thing forever and ever, and there's no more profit in these wells for anybody. And so they're going to do it as cheaply and quickly as possible, and that's what's got us into this situation. And when you have operators that fly by night Jake leg operators that just milk a well and for all it can until it waters out or there's a huge problem with it, and they walk away and file bankruptcy and leave it up to the state to plug. I mean, hell, that's socialism. And I mean, really, think about it. We're going to let the government take care of it. That's socialism. And if you have the ways and means to own a couple of $1 million house and on Horseshoe Bay, and you've got $400,000-$500,000 in your kids' fund, hell, I'll sell you dogs on eBay if you walk away from your retirement obligations. I mean, that's just how it's going to have to be. And take your house, I'll take your car. I mean, if you walk away from a well without plugging it and you're going to make the taxpayers pay for it, guess what? You're fixing to be moving in Section 8 housing.
Yeah.
I love it. And I am not one who is typically for regulation and stuff like that, but this I can absolutely get behind because it's being a good steward
of
what we have.
That's right. And and I love the outdoors. I love to fish, and like I said, I love to scuba dive, and we can do better. The industry as a whole can do better. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some really, really great operators out there, some really great people that are doing the right thing. And I've seen them, and I've worked with them, and I've talked to them, and they're really, really trying to do the right thing. But there's a lot of Jake legs out there, and there's a lot of what I call the untouchables. The super majors that think they can just get away with anything with a campaign donation and get somebody to turn a blind eye, and they've got a plane full of lawyers that can come up and fight you till you're dead broke. And and that's just not the way it's going to be. Used to landowners and oil companies had a symbiotic relationship when I was a kid growing up, and they worked together and they looked after one another. And it's just not that way anymore. It's more or less everybody for themselves, and we need to get back to that kind of relationship where landowners and mineral owners and operators work hand in hand together and do the right thing and are good stewards for each other.
Absolutely. All right, so let's turn it, I guess, a little bit into your campaign. So, how is that going? Are you getting out there and trying to meet people, going out to events, social media, anything else like that?
Well, I haven't made any events. We've like I said, it's been quite a busy spring and summer out here, working on wells, and I've got on TikTok. I'm kind of getting used to my TikTok. I like my TikToks and my TikTok, my social media. My social media is growing. I'm not asking for money. I just don't want to be a politician. I want to be a civil servant. And
Hmm.
if I start asking people for money, then I become one of them. And that's not me. I don't want to be in that club. And so, I've kind of coined the term, blue collar rebellion, and I think that's going to be my campaign cry, and try to get people to register to vote, and try to put one of their own in office, and hopefully that'll grow. It's summer's over, and I'll start getting out more, and start making the rounds. But social media is going to be my primary way to get my name out, and get people to listening to my message about what we need to do.
Amanda?
I didn't have anything.
All right.
Besides my shirt idea, I want to make a Hawk a shirt that says Blue Collar Rebellion now.
All right. Well, let's see. So, if anybody does want to learn more about you, if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to reach out to you, find out kind of, what Hawk does for a living, what your plans are, where can somebody go and get that information?
Well, I'm on TikTok at Hawk Dunlap, on X, Twitter X at Hawk Dunlap, Facebook Hawk Dunlap. Everything's Hawk Dunlap. You can email me at Hawkins HAWKINS.Dunlap@yahoo.com, and I'm easily caught up with. I usually start my day between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and I try to answer everything, emails and stuff like that before sun up, and then I get going during the day. So, I like to say that I'm easily accessible, and I always got a few minutes to talk to people, and I think that the main thing that what I want to get across is the Railroad Commission does not regulate railroads, and I think once we start getting people to understand that, then I think we're making headway.
Great. All right. Well, I don't think I have any more questions. You kind of blew through a lot of the ones that I had already set up, and several of them at once. Amanda, do you have any questions? Any more questions?
I don't. I'm just fascinated with it.
I could probably listen to more about the Railroad Commission and how bad it's doing for a couple more hours. All right. Well, Hawk, do you have anything you want to mention before we take off?
No, I don't, and I do appreciate y'all reaching out, and I appreciate y'all's time, and I look forward to seeing this online, and sharing it around, and like I said, if anything, if I can make it to help the party, if I need to be somewhere, if it's within my power, I'll get there.
I will be reaching out to you very soon about that one.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Hawk, for joining us. Thank you, Amanda, again for co-hosting. For everybody who's tuned in to watch, this is not live; it is pre-recorded. But if you did decide to stick around towards the end, this is Hawk Dunlap running for Texas Railroad Commission against an incumbent. Correct? A Republican incumbent and a Democrat, none of which are actually in the industry and don't know what they're talking about. So check out Hawk. The links to his social media is below. He's also got his email you can send a contact to. And also stay tuned for more candidate interviews coming up later. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.